Welcome in, everybody, to the CFB Nation All-America podcast, brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. I'm Bill Trocchi, senior editor at sportingnews.com, alongside Bill Bender, our national college football writer at sportingnews.com, and the former president of the Football Writers Association of America. We are coming to you live on our CFB Nation YouTube channel again. If you want to subscribe, just go over to youtube.com, search CFB Nation, and click subscribe. Today, we have a special guest and a return visitor. We are very excited about a return to the All-America podcast. Longtime Detroit News Michigan reporter Angelique Chengelis is here to drop some Michigan knowledge on us from the most boring beat in the country, right? Is that what we were deciding, if the Michigan is one of the most boring beats in America? Anyway, I was talking to Bill yesterday. I said Michigan, again, had an interesting offseason. We should talk Michigan tomorrow. And your name was the first that came out of his mouth, right, Bill?
Always. And I'm surprised you're not wearing your Big Ten trifecta championship T-shirt that all those people in Columbus and Ann Arbor bought up, right? Do you know it was sold out, though?
It was?
Yeah, like I went on the link, and apparently they sold that shirt out somehow. So who are these sickos? And
who is wearing that shirt?
Let me see when you see one of those in Ann Arbor, and I'll let you know when I see one.
I mean, what about Purdue fans? You think they're going to go rush and buy one with an IU logo on it? I mean, I thought that was really it's really funny, though, Bill. You know, someone was talking to me the other day and said, when was the last time you had a boring Michigan season or year covering the team? And we went back to second year of Brady Hoke. That was like the last time it was calm.
Okay. Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's been kind of crazy covering Michigan for the last decade.
You're the opposite of the Iowa beat. Is that what you're saying? No coaching changes, 9-4, 9-3, 8-4 every year, and that kind of thing. So, all right. So before we get into Michigan, we're going to do our Trocchi trivia question, where we ask a question at the beginning of the show, and then you can think about it, and then we will revisit it at the end of the show. You and Bill can go head to head. Of course, it is going to be Michigan themed. Here we go. In the last 10 years, there have been 4 seasons where Michigan's QB ranked in the top 5 in the Big Ten in passer rating.
Since when?
The last 10 years, there have been 4 seasons.
Okay.
Where the Michigan QB ranked in the top 5 in the Big Ten in passer rating. Can you name the seasons and the QBs? So get your pencils and paper out, but we'll revisit that at the end of the show. So, Angelique, take us through your December. You're getting ready for the holidays, and you're thinking that the season is over, and then suddenly the world turned upside down, and I think it was December 10th. Was the day. Take us through it from a reporter's perspective, and then obviously, the impact on the program.
Well, I'll tell you, every time that I get anything done early, like Christmas decorations, and I'm breathing easy, I will never do that again, because I thought, oh, great, I'm done. And then all of this happened, and it was really crazy. I'm you see the breaking news December 10th, and for a minute you're like, what? Wait, what? And then it just kept going and going, and it was quite a 16 days too, for this search, for a new coach, and then all of a sudden you're at the bowl game, and Kyle Whittingham's there, and it seems like everything wrapped up nicely at the end with a little bow on top, but still obviously there's a lot going on with Sharon Moore and court dates. So, but really, honestly, it feels like every other year of Michigan. It's like December is always kind of busy, and covering this team with Jim Harbaugh when he was here, and then Sharon, and I am thinking it's going to be boring this year. That's what I feel like is going to happen, which is not a bad thing.
You're due for one. You're due for a boring season. The one quick thing I wanted to ask, just to kick it off, the one sort of theme that came out with the Sharon Moore was there were whispers of it for this, and then how loud were the whispers, I guess, is the question. And why did it take so long for them to kind of straighten things out?
Yeah, I mean, the whispers, I had heard things by at late 2022 from a couple players that they suspected something, that there might be some kind of relationship going on. I think it's people will say, well, why didn't you, what are you going to say? You don't go up and say, are you having an affair? I mean, what do you do? But yeah, it was after the USC loss last season. I think Michigan fans were very upset with that, with the performance and the defensive performance. And that's when it started picking up, I think, that the Sharon whispers. That's what this investigation that's ongoing is going to find out, is who knew when, why didn't anything happen sooner? And is there a big issue in this Michigan athletic department? Is there, are there breakdowns everywhere? And, I think we'll know more from that investigation probably late March, maybe early April, finally get the results of that. But yeah, I mean, I think this is something that people were definitely whispering about from mid-October on till it finally culminated with what we all know happened.
And well, so now that if we're using USC as a timeline, how much of I know you probably can't say it this way, but did you sense distractions toward the end of the regular season heading into the Ohio State game? Because when I went to that game, the vibe for me, Angelique, was, yeah, they're not winning today. There's very little to no chance that they're beating this Ohio State team. And it just seemed like it had reached that. And then all of this happens right after that. So, I mean, is there any correlation to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I never thought they were going to beat Ohio State, so distractions or not. But, you look at the 2023 team, talk about distractions, but that was a mature team with some great leaders, and they dealt with everything that was going on around the program. This team, I never, there were some very good leaders, like a Max Bredesen, for instance. But, I think my sense, and it's just my sense, is that the players, I think they lost some respect. They lost. I think it was a comment that Biff Poggi made. They felt betrayed. The players who talked about this before the bowl game, shortly after Sharon's arrest, they felt like they were blindsided by this. And I think maybe even if they had heard whispers about something going on, or if they suspected it, it's still probably, when this happened, it was still like, wow, this guy was coaching us. And, and I will go back to the end. I kept saying I didn't think Sharon should be the hire. I just didn't think he was mature enough. Things I had heard about, just his demeanor, not a super mature guy, but and young, and he really hadn't coached a lot of places. Didn't have that huge network. So I just never felt like he was the guy. And I feel like you look at a program like a Michigan, Ohio State, you just don't hire someone to learn on the job. And people can say, well, Ryan Day wasn't, but Ryan Day had coached in the NFL. He had been around a lot more than Sharon. So I think that all of this just came to this moment where his immaturity, his, did he think he was fooling everybody? All of this caught up to him, and he didn't know how to handle it. And the players, I think, really did. It really affected them toward the end, and they just didn't. I think some of them probably feel like they had a lost season, and some of those guys transferred. So the thing that was written over and over and over again after this, and really in August, is all this stuff about Michigan's reputation is just taking hit after hit after hit. So here's where I land on this a little bit. I love being around the beat writers. Obviously, I love being around communications people. So what is the fix if it's about this reputation and the things that were going on with Connor Stallions, and now this is Kyle Whittingham? Is it as simple as Kyle Whittingham's the fix because of the no nonsense way that he coaches? I think so. I mean, I feel like it's going back to like a Lloyd Carr kind of very disciplined, and I think that you have kids. I think kids and young adults like boundaries. I mean, I think they like some kind of sense of discipline. And I don't think that was there at Michigan this last year in particular. And I think that's what Whittingham brings. And I just think it's we're joking about it's gonna be boring. I don't think I don't expect any kind of craziness. And I think that's a good thing for this program there are a lot of a lot of issues. I mean, we can include Matt Weiss, from a few years ago, Shemi, all these things that have happened in football, and not to mention a few things that have happened in the athletic department. So I think this is just bringing it kind of back to a baseline that was there, like a Lloyd Carr, before that, a Gary Moeller. It just, the players were it was a very disciplined program. And I think that's what Michigan needs, and probably most programs need. And I do think that's, I don't know how long Whittingham wants to coach, but if he can reestablish that here, and then they have that base back, then I think that that's a very good move for Michigan to have brought him in.
Yeah. So backing up just a little bit, like what, the reports were, they were hoping to get Kalen DeBoer if Alabama lost in the first round of the college football playoff. How accurate were those reports? And then in your opinion, when Alabama won the game and he was kind of off the board, Michigan probably came through this as good as they could possibly hope, with Whittingham sitting out there willing to come and stabilize the program.
Yeah. I mean, I think that they really, I don't want to say they lucked out. It just, the timing worked out. And yeah, the DeBoer stuff was legit. And he was the guy at the end of 2023, because I think we knew that Harbaugh wasn't going to come back, even though it wasn't settled yet. And, I kept saying, you got a back channel. The first call in my mind was Kalen DeBoer back then. So I think, Kalen DeBoer is a guy he's got some roots here in Michigan. He was at Eastern Michigan. His offensive coordinator married a woman who went to school at Michigan. So they had ties to this area. And, I talked to a couple of the donors down at the bowl game, and after they won that game, after Alabama won, they just said they couldn't wait without a guarantee, and they couldn't wait for him. And then there's Dillingham, who just announces that he's going to be in the coaching transfer portal. And it just really worked out right. I never thought the Dillingham stuff, like, I thought he was too young. I thought he would have been not the kind of the guy who's going to bring back some calm to Michigan, because I think Michigan needs the calm. And I think Whittingham really just, I think they got lucky that he was available, and he's the right guy. I know people say, well, he's 66, whatever. I don't think that matters. And I think that he's brought in a good staff. I thought that was something that, again, Sherrone didn't have the network to, when Jim Harbaugh took the whole defensive staff and a few other people, he didn't have that network to go pluck guys quickly. And I think Whittingham obviously brought so many of his guys from Utah, BYU, and I think that they've got a really good thing in place here.
That's what I was like on the field with Whittingham and what they bring. The big question is quarterback development with Bryce Underwood. There was some, Angelique, I never thought Bryce Underwood was going to leave. I just, there's too much there. But is the new offense under Kyle Whittingham, that Devin Dampierre is pretty good. You bring him back. What do you anticipate with the quarterback development side for Bryce Underwood, who, let's be honest, up and down this year as a freshman?
Up and down for sure. I mean, that's very accurate. I think one thing Whittingham said in his podcast, in a podcast interview he did with his friend Urban Meyer, is that he was shocked that there was not a quarterback coach for Bryce Underwood, someone designated for him. And they had an analyst who was working, Josh Shinagaga, who really a lot of people really think he's a very good coach. Was he able to focus on Bryce? I doubt it. I think he probably had to deal with all the quarterbacks. So I think that is something that they've really stressed this offseason, is working with Bryce, and Bryce has embraced it. It looks like he is working now with Jordan Palmer, who I had interactions with before with Cade McNamara, because he coached him for years. He's not ready to talk about his work with Bryce Underwood, but it's work that needs to be done. And, now you're bringing in Hurley, the kid, the LSU transfer. You're bringing in other guys who now there's a room that's giving him some competition, which I think Bryce Underwood also needed last year. He didn't have that in the quarterback room. And, so I think that these are all things they're working on him individually. And in this offense, I think that you'd expect to see him running a little bit more, and probably not, not something you want to hear all the time, because you don't want to put your quarterback in in a tough situation to get hurt. But I think that's something you'll see a little bit more. But I think that, my other emphasis is this offensive line, and it looked like it was getting better last year with 3 redshirt freshmen, and now I think you bring in a guy, Harding, who I think is legit, and I think that they're going to really improve there. And I think starting there and working backwards, I think it's going to really help Bryce Underwood this year.
Well, we saw that in the Super Bowl. If you don't have an offensive line, the quarterback has no chance. And
exactly,
we see quarterbacks take a big jump from the first year to their second year if they've got some, stability around them and things like that. So I think we saw the talent last year with Bryce Underwood, and now we'll see it take off. But that leads me into my next question. We're happy with Whittingham. We're happy with Underwood's, returning and stability. Look at that schedule. I mean, it is challenging. They've got 4 teams who were in the college football playoff last year in Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, and Oklahoma. They've got Iowa and Minnesota. Both had Big Ten winning records in the Big Ten last year. And then there's Penn State hanging out there, which, they're a big wild card or whatever. So not easy is what my point. Not easy for Mr. Whittingham in year 1.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I just wrote something. It hasn't run yet, just looking at Michigan's opponents going into spring ball. And it is a daunting schedule. And I didn't do a prediction yet, just because I think it's, one of those, what everybody calls them, far too early or too early predictions. But it looks to me like it could be an 8-4 season. I mean, it could be a 7-5 season. You just don't know. They lost a lot on defense too. And it's good that Oklahoma's in Ann Arbor, if that matters. It's a more like last year's schedule. It was the first time they didn't start with like 6 home games to start the season like they usually do. This was like every week they were traveling, and that was a different rhythm for this team. So this year they start with the 4 home games, but that first Big Ten game is against Iowa. And I think that's going to be a really intriguing game. And I think that, they have to get through Oklahoma, of course, but then you got Indiana too. I mean, this is going to be this is a very daunting schedule, and you're going to Columbus. So, I don't know if you put these high expectations on Whittingham this first season in terms of record. I think to me, it's about reestablishing the discipline and getting these guys to work and become fundamentally sound. And then you see what happens. But I think this is a really, I'm looking at the schedule right now. I mean, this is a really, really tough one. But crazy things have happened. But I think Penn State's going to be up. They certainly finished stronger. But I do think the Iowa game is going to be really interesting to watch, because their defense is always so sound, and they've definitely made some moves on offense. And same with Minnesota. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's hard to say what the prediction is, but I covered a lot of 8-4 seasons at Michigan going way back, and it has that kind of feel to me.
And that's the early Lloyd Carr era was like that. Obviously, they had a couple now, which brings me to a question that they're asking around here in Columbus. There's talk about home and homes with Georgia and Alabama being wiped out. And Bill and I had this argument last year, and I used Michigan and Texas as examples. I said, why would you schedule anybody in non-conference play if you have that conference schedule? Because I was using the argument last year, had Michigan maybe not played Oklahoma or Texas not played Ohio State, if we're just going by 10-2, they would have been in the playoff. Right. As crazy as Michigan's season was, they would probably have been right on that line. So is that something you think will happen with Michigan if they have to play schedules like this in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I can't see them continuing this. I know, they're going to have Notre Dame coming back on down the road. So is this something you really want? I mean, it's one of those things you debate all the time about the playoff. I love seeing Ohio State and Texas. I loved going to Oklahoma last year. I thought that was cool. And Michigan's got Texas in 27, going to Austin, a return game. Those are great. I mean, I love them, but is it really fiscally responsible? Is it responsible for the team in terms of getting to the playoff? And I mean that fiscally, because you make more money when you're going into the playoff and you have a chance to win the national championship. So no, I don't think that's something that you focus on going forward, but they have these contracts right now, and I don't see them getting out of it. And but I think that you've got to really tamp down those games, and I just don't see how they work for you. You're right. I mean, Michigan, let's see, they play Eastern Michigan instead of Oklahoma last year. Then more than likely they make the playoff, and that's something that you think about. And but gosh, I'd miss a regular season game like that. I think those are really. But but as you said, Bill, I mean, the Big Ten is so tough. You get those matchups in the Big Ten. It's just fun to go to an Oklahoma, and it was fun to see all the Michigan fans on my flight go. It was like going to a bowl game, and they get excited about it, but they also got excited a few years ago going to Seattle for the Washington game for the first time, and going to LA last year for USC. So the newness of that will die down, but it'll be sad when those non-conference games are gone. But they have to be, I think.
I always counter Bill with this one. Like, when you win it, it's a huge boost to your CFP. Miami does not get into the playoff without playing Notre Dame last year. Now, the ACC is not as tough as the Big Ten. I'm not saying that, but had Miami squeaked in, and it was solely because they beat Notre Dame, non-conference, and then they made it to the national championship game. So, there is value to it too. Everyone's scared to lose, but when you win, it's a huge boost as well. So I think it works both ways, and I hope ADs realize that, because we're all better off when, like you said, when Texas plays Ohio State, and we have fun games like that. I want to ask you your perspective just on the whole shifting landscape of how the Big Ten has kind of surged past the SEC, and it's looking, it's draft picks, it's recruiting now. All of a sudden, it's not 6 straight SEC schools, 1 through 6 in the high school recruitings anymore. And of course, the last 3 national championships is they're putting on T-shirts, I guess, for the Big Ten and all that. What do you attribute it to? I guess I'm sure you've pondered this, but there's no question about it that the SEC 10, 15 years it was kind of on top as far as the strongest conference, and that is no longer the case for sure.
You mean it doesn't mean more? The SEC anymore? I mean, you look at those last 3 national championships, and it's pretty amazing that they were all 3 Big Ten teams. And I think it's the revenue sharing, it's the amount of money. Look, I mean, these schools, Indiana included, have big donor bases, and they are generating money, and they're building close to $40 million Michigan's going to spend on revenue sharing this year. So the money's there. Now you are buying teams, and you can build a team that can match and surpass these teams in the SEC that may or may not have had that advantage before. I mean, all the stories about the bagmen and all of that, maybe that was true. And, now you're seeing it with revenue sharing. These schools are able to build a roster with the revenue sharing money, the NIL money. And I think that's the great equalizer now. And, it used to be, all the players just want to go down south because it's warmer and stuff. I never quite bought that. I mean, I think that there was definitely more to it, but now they have no problem coming up here and playing football and going to Ohio State, certainly. But I mean, Ohio State's always sort of been there. So they were definitely more consistent in all this, even the last 10, 15 years, clearly. So I think more like even Penn State. I mean, the money is there now. And I think that's a very, very important part of this. And, it took Michigan a few years, I think, to understand and grasp NIL. And they've certainly made up that ground. And they're definitely fully participating in this new era of revenue sharing and spending 38 to 40 million on a football team, which is mind-boggling. It's still like, wow. I still have a hard time. Like, I realize I'm interviewing players who are making more money than I'll ever make. And it's just a different world. But I think that difference it's what's made them so competitive and able to take that next step to win national championships consistently.
Well, and on not just football. I mean, obviously, if you can just let us know what the vibe is around campus with, you're doing the women's basketball team, 20 wins. The men's basketball team will probably be ranked number 1 on Monday, barring something if they win their games this week. Has it translated to basketball more, where I know over the years, like Michigan basketball was an afterthought to football, with the exception of like the Fab Five and a couple of Trey Burke years. And then on the women's side, obviously they've gotten really good. Has this Big Ten thing actually translated to basketball on the women's and men's side?
A little bit. And I think the big thing that's helped Michigan men's basketball is Dusty May. And I was having this conversation yesterday. He has been masterful in terms of revenue sharing and using their budget, their big budget to build this roster. And he's clearly a very good coach. And this is a very good team. And you look at the women's basketball team. I mean, Kim Barnes-Arico came here from St. John's like 14 years ago, and she won there at St. John's. And I mean, I've covered women's basketball. I mean, my first job was covering Pat Summitt and Lady Vols, and I never, I was so used to seeing the best of women's basketball. And then I came to Michigan and I'm like, wow, it's not very good. And she has built a program and she gets a smidgen of the revenue sharing. So I know she wants more, but they've worked well with NIL and maintaining a roster. They've got a couple McDonald's All-Americans on the women's team. And, I think that they just hope that they hold on to them. I mean, that's now the thread in women's basketball is, transfer portal. It's always there. But yes, I think it's all trickled down to men's and women's basketball here. And look, you look at Michigan State too. Both of their men's and women's basketball programs have done extremely well, are doing extremely well. And I still think like for women's basketball, there's still that top tier it's going to be hard to break into that with UConn and South Carolina and Texas, but now UCLA. But I think both of these programs. But Dusty May, I think, is he could probably teach some clinics on how to build a roster and how to use this revenue sharing and the money they have.
Well, I was going to sneak one more in real quick. Sorry, Bill. Michael McDonald wins the Super Bowl. Michigan defensive coordinator for a year off the Ravens. Jesse Minter gets hired. I've kind of thrown it around in our newsroom a little bit. Does that take some stain off the end of the Harbaugh with the controversy that he has guys that are actually coaching in the NFL at a high level? Jim gets them to the playoffs 2 times. Or is it just a matter of, I always said this, Angelique. I said Jim Harbaugh was better for college football than the NFL, but he's a better NFL coach than he is a college coach. And I've always thought that. And is that what's happening now with these guys doing the success that they're having at the next level?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point, Bill. And yeah, I mean, I know Michigan fans are saying, look, see, these guys were legit. I mean, you had Jay Harbaugh on that Seattle staff too, and their special teams are pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I do think people, you want to talk so much about Connor Stallions, which I think is giving that guy just too much oxygen. But I think people forget that 2021 season, the staff that changed, that staff that Harbaugh had. He fired Don Brown. He brought in Mike McDonald, a gift from his brother John, from the Ravens staff. And then you added Mike Hart. You brought in Steve Klinkscale, another guy who's with Harbaugh on his staff now. And you brought in some different coaching pieces that really made a difference. And Aiden Hutchinson breaking his ankle at Indiana in 2020 was also a good thing for Michigan, and said he came back. He wasn't going to come back. So you had all those pieces. So I think that always gets overlooked now. It's just overshadowed by Connor Stallion. So yes, I think Michigan fans are using this display on Sunday as saying, see, it wasn't, you can say all you want about Connor Stallions, but this was a legit coaching staff and look what they're doing now. And yeah, Jesse Minter now at the Ravens. I mean, that was, and people have been talking about him since his first season with the Chargers a couple of years ago. So, yeah, I think a lot of people are looking at it that way. But you know that it's not going to change anything. I mean, the Connor Stallions thing is always going to be there. So it's just how you want to look at it, I guess.
All right. Well, before we, Angelique, Bill's a multimedia superstar. He's got another radio interview coming up.
I'm going on in Indiana to talk with the defending. That's something, Angelique, neither one of us thought we would ever say is I'm going on Indiana radio to talk about the defending national champions with Jim Coyle.
Football national
football, just, yeah, but no, yeah, go ahead with the trivia question.
Yeah, let's get back to the trivia question. Angelique, you can go first. Throw out a name for us. So in the last 10 years, there have been 4 seasons where the Michigan QB was ranked in the top 5 in the Big Ten in passer rating. Give me your first guess.
Jake Rudock. Does that count? Was he
2016
though?
So is that too far back?
15, I think. He was 15.
Yeah. I went back just to 16.
Wilton Spate?
Wilton Spate. He was 3rd in the Big Ten in 2016.
So that was the last year. Okay, we got that one. Can we get Shea Patterson in 18? Does that work?
2018, Shea Patterson was 2nd in the Big Ten in passer rating. 2 seasons remaining.
Oh my God.
It's not like you can skip through 2020, I think, and then unless somebody in 19 was, which I feel like there wasn't. So it's got to be. Go ahead, like it's got to be.
I mean, is it JJ?
JJ's got to be one of those years.
Yeah. But we need a middle. Was it Cade McNamara?
Not Cade McNamara.
So I'm going to say JJ in 23 had to be.
JJ in 23 led the Big Ten in passer rating. And in 2022, JJ was 2nd in passer rating. So you are on the money, Bill. Those JJ had two of the 4 seasons for Michigan.
Oh, I got one more quick one for Angelique before we let her go. And kind of teases what we're doing. We're in a while here, Sporting News is going to have its 140 greatest moments. And we discussed the college football ones a couple weeks ago. And Michigan pops up on there for better, for worse. If you had to pick all these years you've covered Michigan football, and like examples would be Desmond striking the pose or App State or Cordell's Hail Mary, which one as a writer hit you and I would say that for me being in there, it was probably the punt fumble. But which one hit you the most? A singular Michigan moment where you're like
the lightning bolt.
That's the one I'm going to remember the most. I know that's a very broad question, but we have a lot of Michigan popping up in this conversation.
I mean, and there are a lot. I mean, there's also Braylon Edwards, the triple overtime win over Michigan State. I mean, there's the Desmond, reaching not before the Heisman pose against Notre Dame. I still. Appalachian State for sure, but I still like remember so vividly the Hail Mary, the Colorado Hail Mary, and that was still early in my career, and we're still using the phone lines where you got to plug in the back, and I forgot to file my story, and I watched Cordell releasing the ball, and I unplugged my phone. I'm like, this is gonna happen. And it did. And I'll just never forget Steve Morrison holding his helmet, the linebacker, Michigan linebacker, and then running down to the post game because I had a file and literally almost running right into Gary Moeller, who looked just completely like he had lost every bit of blood in his face. He was just gray. And that's that, and definitely trouble with the snap. I mean, I joke every time I drop something, I say trouble with the snap. I just that still lives with me. But yeah, that Hail Mary.
Yeah. So Angelique, I was trying to explain to some of the younger guys on our staff that Hail Mary. We've seen Hail Marys before. For whatever reason, that one hit different. It just did. It was just.
I think it's because he threw the ball 70 yards in the air.
Yes. Yes.
And it was just a clean catch. It wasn't a deflection. It was just wild. It was
unbelievable. It was truly unbelievable. And I also recall a couple of reporters in the front row kind of throwing their notebooks against the window. Like it busted everybody's deadline. For us personally, it was like, oh my God, we got to file, we got to rewrite.
And the photo was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, which back in the day meant something big time too. And it said it hit different like that. So anyway, all right. Well, we got to get Bill over to Indiana so we can talk more. But we really appreciate you coming back and visiting with us. We love return visitors. That's always fun. So thank you to everyone for listening to the CFB Nation All-America podcast, brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Thank you to Irish Breakdown, your source for Notre Dame football information. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you next week, 9:30 on Wednesday morning.